Welcome, pop culture fans. Welcome to the Triphonic Lounge and a new feature here on Juke's Joint, the Greg Juke channel, Reflections. Reflections will be a review segment about things that are not necessarily music or records. They might be, but about other things that interest me, and I'm sure a lot of you. Other areas of interest, movies, novels, comic books and graphic novels, which happen to be a interest of mine. And in this case, the worlds of music and graphic novel come together in a very important story. So for today's feature, the first in what hopefully will be a long line here on Reflections, the Brian Epstein story, The Fifth Beatle. This is a graphic novel, and it's a novel. It's pretty thick. It's definitely beyond comic book level, and this is not for kids. And it's the story of Brian Epstein, the manager of the Beatles, the quote, fifth Beatle, and probably the one really most responsible for them becoming who they became, how important they became to the world, how everyone got to know them. Without Brian Epstein, the Beatles would have been a popular club band, and there's no question about that. Now, this is not a story for kids. It is definitely an adult read. It gets into some of the nitty-gritty of his lifestyle choices and some of the challenges that he had to overcome to not only become Brian Epstein, but to introduce the Beatles to the world on such a grand level. So the Beatles are a part of this story, but they are not the main feature. It really is all about Brian Epstein and his struggles. This book spent some time on the New York Times bestsellers list. It came out in 2013 in its first edition, and in 2014 there was an update because Brian Epstein was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So it's a good read. It's worthwhile. Again, a bit challenging because of the true details of his life, but worthwhile, I think, to understand the milieu that was happening at the time and how they overcame some great odds to really take over the world musically and culturally and otherwise. There is quite a bit of sadness in this story, but it is also true. The details are primarily true. There is a lot of symbolism and a lot of condensing of timelines and things to make it work in a short story like this, or a short book, I should say, not a short story. But it's great. It's a worthwhile read for the comic fans, for the graphic novel fans, for the music fans, for the Beatles fans. If you have not already read The Fifth Beatle, check it out.
Paperback Ryan's
Took me about a year to get through this, in that I've had it sitting around for quite a while. I bought it about a year ago, and I have a stack of books, graphic novels, and comics that I haven't gotten to yet just because of schedule and timing. And I had a little time off, so I decided I'm going to finally tear through this thing. And it was definitely a page-turner, and the artwork is awesome. It is sort of halfway between comic art and illustration painting. The writing is interesting. You've got to be able to sort of piece things together from your previous knowledge of history and the Beatles. If you don't know that before you read this, then you're going to be looking things up to verify different details and see what fits. But if you know the story and you understand the times, it definitely gives you a little more insight and kind of condenses things into a digestible story. The story is by Vivek J. Tiwari, and the artwork is by Andrew C. Robinson, and the two work together very, very well. A highly recommended read. Remember, though, it is not a kid's book, and it is not really a Beatles story, so to speak. But for those interested, a very highly entertaining and enjoyable read, The Fifth Beatle, a graphic novel about the Brian Epstein story. We'll see you next time.